Today we're in a Chicago neighborhood not only rich with history, but rich with moolah. Many of the most famous and influential Chicagoans have lived in this neighborhood, which is also home to the original Playboy Mansion and North America's only museum dedicated to surgery. That's right, we're in the Gold Coast. What's good, YouTube? I'm Louis Gusto. Welcome back to Chicago. Make sure you finesse that like button and subscribe to the page for more content just like this. In this video, we're gonna discover some of the treasures of the Gold Coast. We'll also answer some questions like, is Gold Coast Chicago the richest neighborhood in the United States? What survives from the Gilded Age? And what kind of stuff is there to do in the Gold Coast besides sit around all day and count your money? But before we get started, I have a trivia question for you guys. In 1929, you could rent a 17-bedroom apartment in the Gold Coast at 1200 North Lakeshore Drive. How much is that in 2025 dollars? Now with that all out the way, let's explore Gold Coast, Chicago. The boundaries of Chicago neighborhoods are forever up for debate, but for our purposes, the Gold Coast is bounded on the north by North Boulevard, on the south by Oak Street. Western boundaries include Clark Street and Rush Street, and the Gold Coast is bounded on the east by DuSable Lakeshore Drive. Nearby neighborhoods include Old Town and Streeterville. The Gold Coast neighborhood sits directly south of Lincoln Park, the actual park, not the neighborhood. And it's just a few hundred feet from the shore of Lake Michigan. To get to the Gold Coast, take the CTA Red Line to the Clark and Division Station and then walk east. You can also take the 151 bus along Lakeshore Drive, get off at North Avenue, Elm Street, or Oak Street. Other buses that serve the neighborhood include the 22, the 36, and the 72. The neighborhood is also super accessible via bike along the Lakefront Trail or Dearborn Street. Unlike, say, the Upper East Side of Manhattan, the Gold Coast doesn't have public transportation running through the actual neighborhood, but rather around the borders. There are so many ways to get to the Gold Coast, but you already know my recommendation: walk, bike, or take public transportation. The Gold Coast neighborhood fits nearly perfectly into the Chicago grid system. However, three very famous Chicago streets technically changed names in this neighborhood due to the fact that they lead directly to the park, and that would be North Boulevard, Dearborn Parkway, and State Parkway. The Gold Coast, unlike most neighborhoods of Chicago, has always been an enclave for the wealthy and elite. In other words, the who's who of Chicago. Before the city was settled by white folks from the East Coast, many Native American tribes called this area home. And you gotta figure that the area right next to a big old lake was pretty desirable. As a matter of fact, Clark Street, which started as a Native American trail, is one of the western boundaries of the Gold Coast neighborhood. In the time after Chicago's incorporation as a city, there was no Gold Coast. In fact, much of this area was actually a cemetery. Now you know why there's an Elm Street. Once the 1880s arrived, legendary Chicagoan Potter Palmer decided to leave the fashionable Prairie Avenue District in today's South Loop. He built himself and his wife a mansion that looked just like one of Bowser's castles. We talked about all of that in the South Loop video. Shortly after moving here, Potter Palmer began selling parcels of land to other members of Chicago's upper class. This is really what got the Gold Coast rolling. Unfortunately, in the 1950s, the mansion was demolished, along with so many other historical Chicago buildings. It would have been nice if they preserved the building as some sort of museum or cultural center, but thankfully the art that once hung on those walls is now on display at the Art Institute of Chicago. In the following years, more mansions, exclusive hotels, and the very first luxury apartment buildings began popping up all over the Gold Coast neighborhood. First along Lakeshore Drive, which had been extended up to here in 1875, and then along Astor Street. Astor Street was actually named for John Jacob Astor of New York City. He actually never lived in Chicago, but at the time was one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the United States. So naming a street after him brought even more prestige to the neighborhood, and they already had prestige to spare. This neighborhood was given its nickname the Gold Coast by college kids who were returning from the East Coast in the 1920s. Now, the sheer density of wealth and status that has existed here in the neighborhood really protected it from urban decay that befell other areas of the near North Side. Famous residents of the Gold Coast neighborhood include Theodore Thomas, who was the first conductor of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, Robert McCormick, editor and publisher of the Chicago Tribune for 30 years, Louise de Koven Bowen, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, famed architect, John Wellborn Root, another famed architect, Erna Phillips, who created the soap opera genre, Frank Lloyd Wright briefly lived here. The Astor Street district became a Chicago landmark in 1975, and the entire Gold Coast neighborhood was placed on the National National Register of Historic Places in 1978. Back in the 1980s, the Gold Coast was second only to Manhattan's Upper East Side in terms of wealthiest urban neighborhoods in the United States. Although today, other places have leapfrogged it, the Gold Coast remains one of the wealthiest districts in the country. The surviving Gilded Age mansions in the Gold Coast neighborhood were primarily designed in the Queen Anne, Richardsonian Romanesque, and Georgian Revival styles. There are also lots of contemporary apartment and condo buildings with prices that would make even Caleb Williams go digging in his pockets. The George Swift Isham home was built in 1899 for Dr. Isham, who was a surgeon. Hugh Hefner bought it in 1959, and it became the original Playboy Mansion. When Hefner left Chicago for LA, he donated the mansion to the School of the Art Institute, and it became a dormitory. Today, this historic mansion is divided into several multi-million-dollar condos, and boy, if those walls could talk. The magnificent Three Arts Club was designed by famed architectural duo Halliburd and Roche. It was built as a home and club for women coming to the big city to study one of the three major arts: drama, music, and painting, all three of which are today replaced by AI. In 2025, RH Chicago, aka Restoration Hardware, calls the building home and is also a Chicago landmark. The 7 houses on Lakeshore Drive District are 7 rare survivors from the Gilded Age of Chicago. They are all original Gold Coast mansions built from 1889 to 1917. Other famous homes in the Gold Coast neighborhood include the Archbishop's residence at 1 East North Boulevard. It's a Queen Anne style mansion and the oldest surviving home in the district. It was built in 1885 and has been home to several archdioceses of Chicago cardinals. The James Charnley House was a collaboration between Louis Sullivan and Frank Lloyd Wright. It was built in 1892 and rejects the popular classical architectural styles of the time in favor of abstract modern design. The Chicago chapter of the Society of Architectural Historians is headquartered right here. The Frank Fisher Studio at 1209 State Parkway was built in 1936 and is a very rare example of art moderne. Legendary architect John Wellborn Root designed and lived in this house at 1308 North Astor Street. It was built in 1888. Root was the chief architect of the 1893 World's Fair, and he partnered with Daniel Burnham to design some of the most legendary buildings in Chicago. Unfortunately for him, he died of pneumonia at the age of 41 right here in this house. The Patterson McCormick Mansion is a massive home built in 1891, built for Eleanor Medill, the daughter of Chicago Tribune publisher and former mayor Joseph Medill. The Madlener House was built for brewery owner Albert F. Madlener and is a fine example of Prairie School architecture. Today, it's the home of the Graham Foundation. And we cannot talk about architecture in the Gold Coast neighborhood without mentioning the wooden alley just south of the Archbishop's residence. Back in the day, all the alleys in Chicago were made out of wood. Not exactly great for fireproofing. This wooden alley was built in 1909 but restored in 2011. What would a Chicago neighborhood be without magnificent places to eat, drink, and chill? Here are just a few of my personal favorites. Welcome to Le Colonial in Gold Coast, a French-Vietnamese fusion. It's inspired by French-Vietnamese cuisine of the 1920s. Beautiful decor here and great food. We actually came here in our very first Gold Coast Chicago neighborhood guide, so we're throwing it back today with some crispy vegetable rolls to start us off. It's got a little dipping sauce, cha gyo chai. Wow, that's one of those. This is delicious. It really has a lot of nostalgic flavors. It reminds me of the egg rolls I used to eat growing up. So good.
I'm gonna try one. Ooh, it's so crispy. It started flaking apart as I picked it up.
Narissa wrapped this up in the lettuce. It's got a hot pepper and some mint. Gonna dip it in the sauce now. Ooh, looks so good.
These are vegetarian and they are amazing. Vegetarians out there, please come eat this.
Our mains are here. We got the kari tam, which is a green shrimp curry with lots of vegetables, and the goy bun so, a seared sea scallop salad. Let's eat. Bon appetit. Comes with noodles. They need to squeeze a little lime, huh? Well, it ain't gonna be pretty, but here we go. Though the scallops are warm, the rest of the salad is cold, and those flavors are so refreshing. A lot of punchiness in it, and so good. The scallops nice and meaty, great sear on them too. It's just an enjoyable experience here.
I'm grabbing myself a little bit of jasmine rice to try with our curry. We got a curry with shrimp and a bunch of vegetables. Cheers! We're gonna put the camera down now so we can really enjoy this meal.
Once again, Le Colonial was an amazing experience. It is a great date spot, also a great spot to bring your family if they're into this type of cuisine, which we certainly are. Like I said, last time we did a Gold Coast neighborhood guide, we went to Le Colonial. Times were different back then. We had to get takeout and take it to the park right in front of the Drake. We ate a little bit more than we normally do for lunch. I knew Narissa loved it when I looked in the bowl and I saw no more curry and no more rice. Definitely gotta give Le Colonial my 5 Diamond Award. Yes, that's right. The Third Coast Cafe is the oldest cafe in the Gold Coast. Don't forget to stop by Lou Malnati's for classic Chicago deep dish pizza. The bar scene in the Gold Coast is lively, with places like Hopsmith Tavern, Butch McGuire's, and the Original Mothers. Coffee scenes in my videos are like explosions in Michael Bay films. There's gotta be at least one. And at La Colombe, I love it because when you order drip coffee, you have a couple of options. I went with the lighter roast today, and I know what you're thinking, well, at Starbucks, I can have a choice of roast too. Yeah, you get a choice of light over roasted, medium super roasted, and dark burnt. Sparrow is located in a classic 1927 Art Deco apartment building. It's a lobby bar that was inspired by the great hotel lobby bars of Chicago's past. There's Velvet Taco, Gibson Steakhouse, Maple and Ash, and the original Pancake House. It's time for dinner at the 3 Arts Cafe. I have been dying to come here for so long. It's housed in this beautiful building, the 3 Arts Club. How many times on the channel have I talked to y'all about a historic building here in Chicago? Out of those times, it's been a very, very small percentage that I've actually gone into the building. So it's always a special treat when we get to do that. My very first time inside the 3 Arts building. It was designed by Halliburton and Roche to be a club for women who could study drama, music, literature. And now we're getting ready to enjoy a meal and some drinks here at the 3 Arts Cafe by Restoration Hardware. Do you hear that noise? Well, that's the beautiful historic fountain that's been restored here. And this is a super chill spot. Everybody seems to be having fun. It's an upscale yet casual spot. And we got a little bottle coming.
Being at the 3 Arts Club Cafe makes you feel special. It's such a grand, opulent, historic, beautiful place. We've had such a fun day today exploring Gold Coast. It's funny because the last time we were here exploring, it was really, really hot. The middle of summer. I remember it being a little bit humid too, and today I wouldn't say that it was frigid, but it was cold. Luckily, we had our beautiful new coats from GU to keep us warm. Growing up, I would have looked at you funny if you told me that I would enjoy one day walking along the streets looking at historic mansions.
All right, to start off, we got a bottle of Pierre Spar
which is a Brut Rosé from France. Cheers. I got the RH burger specifically because we've been doing burger tours on the channel a lot. Make sure you check those out. We got them in Chicago and in New York City. I got the RH burger, which has 2 patties, American cheese, pickles, Dijonnaise, and onions. Bon appetit. That is a solid burger.
This is like an elevated French dip sandwich. Gotta get a little bit of a dip. That's even better than I remembered it the last time.
Whether you live in the Gold Coast or are just visiting, there is a mountain of things to do. At the top of the list, we have famous Oak Street Beach, one of Chicago's premier beaches. Not only can you rent a chair and relax as the waves roll in, if you turn around, you have one of the most beautiful views of the skyline.
Okay, so it's not exactly a beach day here in Chicago, but I couldn't not take y'all to Oak Street Beach. This is the place to be during the summertime if you're anybody who wants to be anybody in the Windy City. This is where you can bring your Prada towel. Now, growing up as a Florida boy, I went to the beach a lot. So it's really nice that when I'm in Chicago, I can recreate that magic a little bit. Lay out my towel, get a lawn chair, cold beverage, no alcohol because it's not permitted in Chicago Park District. I would walk all the way to the shore of Lake Michigan, but I got on brand new gym shoes and I'm not about to ruin them with a combination of wet sand and wet snow. Oh, and by the way, if you are enjoying this Gold Coast neighborhood guide, make sure you subscribe.
The Charlie Persky House Museum was designed by Louis Sullivan and Frank Lloyd Wright. To get your worship on, you can attend a service at St. Christomom's Church or Lakeshore Drive Synagogue.
Since we are in the Gold Coast, of course our stop has to be at one of these legendary mansions. We're right here on Lakeshore Drive with 3 mansions behind us, one of which houses the International Museum of Surgical Science. So why don't we go learn how to cut people open? The first gallery that we're checking out in the museum has various paintings depicting scientists receiving awards, anatomy. Now, these aren't your typical Renaissance oil paintings. They're not depicting religion, but rather science. So maybe a little controversial at the time of their painting. Who knows? For all my fellow four-eyed nerds out there, this is a perfect gallery for you to study the history of ophthalmology. They've got spectacles and all sorts of vision correction throughout the years. I personally wear contact lenses made out of a finely, precisely made silicone. This way I can see very clearly wherever I go. But I do wear glasses from time to time.
I'm very familiar with these charts. I've gotten the letters wrong once or twice in my life.
This is a collection of quizzing glasses. They're highly decorative and they were very fashionable. You could take them to the opera to get a better look at the performers on stage. Now, these were fashion items.
Pick one of these up and head to the opera.
This might be the coolest name for a museum gallery that I've ever stepped foot in, the Hall of Immortals. This room contains multiple statues of people that have made an impact on not just surgery, but medicine in general. Louis Pasteur, who discovered pasteurization. We've got the people that discovered the circulation of blood, that discovered that germs cause diseases, people that revolutionized surgery by making the environment sterile, washing your hands. Yeah, something as simple as that. People didn't do back in the day before delivering babies. I mean, that's crazy when you think about it.
Some of the smartest people who have ever lived. Marie Curie, who helped so many soldiers in World War I.
There's even a statue of Imhotep for all you ancient Egyptian freaks. But yeah, it's definitely a very imposing gallery and a lot to learn if you just maybe jot down some of these scientists that have lived throughout the centuries. You can learn a lot. And that's what we like to do on the channel. We kind of like to combine learning with fun and of course, wrap it up in some comedy. Ba-dum-tsh. This is Hippocrates, one of the big dogs of medicine throughout the years. Obviously, he gives his name to the Hippocratic Oath, which is something that all doctors have to follow. Yeah, it's pretty important. And
this model gives new meaning to I got a stomach ache.
this is an early dental x-ray machine. Definitely one of the most unpleasant experiences that you'll ever have. But this whole room is dedicated to x-rays, which is really cool because in Astoria, Queens, we visited the museum where we saw lots of cathode ray tubes, television. Well, these are x-ray tubes here in Chicago. This is an x-ray shoe fitter and it's quite appropriate to see today because I just got fitted for my brand new New Balance shoes.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the party? Because he had no body to go with.
Not only can you learn about the history of surgery through various artifacts, readings, statues, but on the 4th floor of the International Museum of Surgical Science, they have rotating art exhibits. Art meets science sounds like my kind of place. This gallery in particular is known as Embroidered Morphologies, and it was done by fellow Brooklynite Deborah Simon. She plays with our images of bunnies and bears, two animals that we kind of take from childhood through adulthood and see them through different lenses. These aren't real taxidermied animals, they're actually pieces of art, and they have embroidered on them their internal organs and nervous system, things like that, so that we can see the connection between these animals and ourselves. It's a small gallery, but very powerful, and I just kind of took to it right away. I do like rabbits and bears, obviously, the bears. It's interesting to see them through this lens, and I really appreciate this gallery. So if you have time, definitely come and see this one. So the International Museum of Surgical Science in Gold Coast, Chicago is obviously not your everyday museum. Coming to this museum definitely involves putting yourself in a different frame of mind, right? This is a museum where you're gonna learn about the history of surgery, of medicine in general. You'll see statues of people that contributed, learn about countries who made major contributions. They have apparatuses, old machines, replicas of tools found in Pompeii, art exhibits. Everybody can have fun at the Surgical Museum, whether you're a kid, adult, or some kind of hybrid. And one of the things that Narissa and I agree on is that even though kids can come to this museum, it's not a museum designed for kids. And that's something that kind of ticks us off sometimes, is that when we actually want to learn, even though we're adults, but a lot of these museums are really geared towards kids and they kind of condescend to you if you're an adult. While it's not your everyday run-of-the-mill museum, it's definitely a demonstration of why Chicago is a great place to come, because you're gonna find things here that you won't find anywhere else in the world. Case in point, this is the only surgical museum in North America, housed in a beautiful former mansion. Just imagine somebody lived and walked through these halls, little kids running around, falling down on the marble staircases. It must have been a great time. Gold Coast, Chicago is one of the smaller neighborhoods of the city. Thus, there's not a whole lot to do here, but what there is to do is a lot of fun. And one of the things besides the museum that we just went to is viewing these historic mansions. This shows off some of Chicago's glamorous past.
And for the kids, there's Gowdy Square Park Playground. The Ambassador Hotel is Chicago's original boutique hotel, opened up in 1926. The Latin School of Chicago was founded in 1888 and is one of the city's premier private schools.
The Oak Street Retail District is what 5th Avenue is to Manhattan and Rodeo Drive is to Beverly Hills. Now let's get to shopping.
Now, if you want to live in the Gold Coast, hey, I don't blame you. I'd love to be surrounded by those mansions as well and so close to Lake Michigan. But just keep in mind that rent/mortgage in the Gold Coast is going to be much higher than most parts of the city. For help with finding an apartment in Chicago, make sure you subscribe. You can find one-bedroom apartments in the Gold Coast for as low as $1,500. 2 bedrooms go for around $3,000, and condos start at $350,000. If you want to purchase one of the historic mansions in the Gold Coast neighborhood, be prepared to shell out an NFL player's salary. Talking about the vibe of the Gold Coast, it's a historic area with lots of charm, so close to downtown Chicago and Lake Michigan. The Red Line is just a stone's throw away. You're just south of Lincoln Park. I mean, there are so many things to do. You can definitely walk this neighborhood, take photos, selfies, little videos here and there. You're gonna see people walking their dogs, maybe not picking up after them. Unfortunately, there is a lot of car traffic in the area, so that can take away from the peace that you might otherwise find. Lakeshore Drive is just on the east, so you're gonna hear a lot of those trucks and cars driving by at all hours. But all in all, Gold Coast is a beautiful neighborhood. It's one of the best in Chicago, in my opinion. I love that I have a condo right there. It's so close to downtown. When I need to fly out around the country, I can get to the airport pretty easily. I like chilling. There are good enough restaurants, not the best restaurants in the city, but you know, good enough to get you by. The Gold Coast neighborhood is an important piece of Chicago's history. It's Chicago's wealthiest neighborhood historically speaking. It's also full of so much history waiting to be discovered. As with many parts of Chicago, it's seen some of its treasured landmarks fall to the wrecking ball. Did you get the answer to the trivia question? In 1929, you could rent a 17-bedroom apartment in the Gold Coast. Sounds like a great deal until you consider the fact that that's about $19,000 in 2025 money. If you made it this far in the video, you are a true legend. Go ahead and pat yourself on the back. Then finesse that like button and subscribe to the page for more Chicago content just like this, and I'll see you next time. Peace.